All right. Well, welcome to another Hot Topic Tuesday. Tuesday, May 10th. Yeah, and we can give the woots, right? All right, something like that. We got some people that know how to get excited. Hey, great topic today. Good friend of mine from my BNI group, Aaron Fogarasi, is going to take us through, and one of the best I've listened to in regards to talking to us about what mold and mold growth is and how to handle it, why it comes up. And when we talked about this last week, even brought up the aspect of what we as realtors have to deal with, because we know how great the inspectors can be at blowing things out of proportion and actually blowing sales out of the water. Because they don't necessarily know or understand it. So, my friend, Aaron Fogarasi, it's all yours.
All right.
Yep, give him that applause.
All right. I really appreciate you guys taking the time, letting me into your fold for this Hot Topic Tuesday. It's a great idea. I love educating people. By the end of this quick spiel, I would like you guys to know the difference between mold remediation and mold removal, because it's good information to know that difference. So first, who is the company I work for is Dry Medic Restoration Services. If it's okay with you, I'd just like to share the screen. I got about a 1.5 minute testimony I'd like to share with you guys, and then I'll go on with the hot topic. I can figure out how. Are you guys seeing the video?
We are, but there's no sound.
Aaron, we don't have the volume coming through.
Okay.
Is that
No
my
problem.
end? Or?
It's no problem. We're just gonna punt. Can you guys see me okay?
You are there.
I'm gonna stop sharing the screen. Okay, I'm gonna punt. We don't have to do the video. Who is Dry Medic Restoration? We're a company that specializes in water damage, fire restoration, mold, and asbestos abatement services. To be very honest, we really don't even want your attic mold cleaning jobs. It's really cleaning a mold out of an attic is a nuisance. It's like washing your car. I'm gonna wash it on Saturday, and then the next Saturday, it needs to be washed again, or else you're not gonna expect the same conditions as it was before. It's something that has to be done periodically, not weekly. That's an exaggeration, but it does stand that it will not stay the same as right after you cleaned it, just like washing a car. So Dry Medic, like I said, we specialize in water damage restoration. I've been in the industry for 30 years. Again, my name is Aaron Fogarasi. I'm a master water restorer, and I'm a mold remediation specialist certified through the IICRC. There's only 2 of us in Southeast Michigan that have this qualification. But after 30 years in the business and hundreds of homes, hundreds of remediations successfully completed, a lot of people look to me for information about mold. So today's topic is mold in the attic. Unfortunately, there are some misconceptions and there are some exaggerations, as Darwin pointed out. The bottom line is there is mold in every single attic. You're fooling yourself if you think that some attics have it and some attics don't. They all do. The real question is it visible? And to what extent do you want to have it removed? As a mold remediation specialist, I can tell you that the attic is not part of the interior living space. And a properly designed attic shouldn't even share the airspace with the home. So if someone tells me there's a spot of mold up in the attic, or even 1,000 spots of mold in the attic, which I already knew, by the way, that doesn't give me any information about the air quality inside the home. So it's not helpful for a inspector to say there's mold in the attic, you have to consult with a remediator, because we already knew that before you sent them out. The tricky part with realtors is that half of the time you're on the buyer's side and you want that bigger problem or larger issue, or you want it perfect. Your intentions are right. It's not about negotiation. Your intentions are good. You want the best, you want the attic clean for your buyer. Commendable, understandable. So let's talk about that. The way to get rid of mold in the attic is something that is not very simple to do, because mold is so small, it's microscopic, and it lives in dust. And so therefore, if there's a speck of dust in the attic, there's likely to be some microbial growth on that dust, even if it's dead. So that's something else. Even if you kill the mold, it's still there. So did you really remove it, or did you just kill it? So the bottom line is to understand the difference between mold removal and mold remediation. That's what I told you at the beginning of this. So in a mold remediation project, we typically have a hygienist come out either before the work is done, and they do a series of baseline testing. They call that an assessment. And then with the information they get from their lab report, they write a protocol and tell the homeowner or the person that hired them, the buyer, maybe the seller, this is what you hired me. This is the information you need. This is what you need to do. Going forward, you need to do this, this, and this. That usually starts with solve the water or moisture problem that created it in the first place. That's way more important than paying somebody to spray something that's going to make the mold magically disappear. It's way more important to pay somebody to fix the insulation that's causing the humidity problem in the attic. So because it's not typically affecting the indoor air, but the only way to find that out is to test the indoor air. Always be leery of your home inspectors that want to take an air sample in an attic. That's pointless. Remember, I told you a few minutes ago that every attic has mold in it. It's a waste of your client's money or the other client's money to take an air sample in the attic. It's always going to come back saying that there's higher levels than inside the house. It's not helpful to say there's mold in the attic and you need to consult someone, because we already know there's mold in there. Now, what inspectors could really do for you guys, though, to do it right, is not just tell you that there's a problem. Well, what do they recommend? Do they recommend a new roof? Do they recommend that you get testing and have it assessed on the interior because they're concerned about the indoor quality? Do they recommend that you add vents? Do they recommend that you add insulation? Those are all things other than call a mold company. But in the heat of a real estate transaction, very often we want to just get this sale done. We just want to get it closed. We just have to move forward so that the buyer can get their home. And they don't really, oftentimes we end up getting pushed out to clean wood on a home that really should have a new roof put on. And you're just putting, lipstick on a pig by treating the mold. So quickly, I went off on a sidetrack. The difference between mold removal and mold remediation. Mold removal, when we do it, we build a containment chamber at the point of entry into the attic. We set up negative air. Our workers put on full protection. They go up in the attic and they treat all of the wood with sodium hypochlorite. Sometimes 2 or 3 applications. Sometimes they have to scrub it in, sometimes they don't, and it just dissipates. The sodium hypochlorite is a chemical removal. When they're done with that, they treat it with a antimicrobial detergent. They come back downstairs, they vacuum up the whole cube with plastic that they built. They take everything down and the job is done. It's usually a 1-day job. It's usually very quick and it's about $3 a square foot. That's called mold removal. Mold remediation involves bringing in a third-party hygienist who's going to come out. They're going to do that assessment that I mentioned. They're going to write a protocol. They're going to come out and check behind the remediator, which is us, make sure we're doing the right work, and test again. And then they're going to provide a post-remediation verification. That's remediation. Not $3 a square foot, it's more like $13 to $15 a square foot. So it's about 4 or 5 times the price. So on a little small house, the average mold removal job is between $3,000 and $4,000. The average mold remediation of that attic is closer to $12,000 or $15,000. And that's because that includes removal of insulation, cleaning of the top of the drywall. It's not just cleaning the wood decking. So when you're the selling agent or when you're the buying agent, when somebody is stating that services are needed in the attic, those services that someone is saying are needed, they should dictate or at least let you know, or you should ask them, what services do you think we need? Do we need to remove the mold or do we need to remediate the attic? Because they're really, like I said, not one and the same. So now I'm hope that is very clear, I hope. And I hope you guys never have to deal with this in your own houses. And now I'm open to any questions that you have about mold or water damage or anything like that.
So maybe, Aaron, if you would, could you go a little bit into what causes the mold to show up in an attic? And
Sure.
if they were to take care of that, what's really the issue and how is it handled so it
Right.
won't be back visibly?
Great question. How did the mold get there? And another question is, who's the magician who's going to say, yep, that's the spot. You take care of that spot, and I guarantee you're all set. Good luck finding that magician. Because the problem is your attic is under attack from heat coming from underneath. There's a layer of insulation, but in order for the attic to function properly, it needs to be the same temperature as the air outside. So how is that accomplished? Because there's plenty of airflow moving up through the lower vents and out through the upper vents at all times, reducing the stack effect of any warmth that happens to accidentally make it up and through the attic. But if the insulation isn't perfect or the ventilation gets compromised over time, and the system doesn't function perfectly, or even when it does, you know, that's the other thing. There's always mold up in that attic. So even if you don't see it, doesn't mean it's not there. So when you see a little bit of it, the question of is what's the water situation? What's getting wet in the winter time when the heat condensates on the cold surfaces, the temperature of the attic? How to try and solve that problem or mitigate that problem is primary focus. And it was a great question, Darwin. What is happening is some heat is getting through the insulation, be it a light fixture, a wire, sometimes heating and air conditioning units or furnaces are posted up in attics. Ducts might not be insulated like from the bathroom or might not be ventilated out properly. There's a million and one causes. To further complicate this issue, guys, there's one company selling insulation, there's another company selling roofing, there's another company selling mold remediation. And no one is taking responsibility for the other guy's work. So I know you want to advise your clients and you want to and you want to give them the right information. So this is how I do it. Is there a current leak? Is the mold that's up there causing damage to the structure or spreading? And do they have an extra $3,000 or $4,000 that they want to throw up there and wash something?
There you go. Matter of fact, the one reason that I think everybody knows in real estate, the reason that we have to deal with it is because of the stigma that gets attached to it. So most of us should realize it's not an issue. It's not in the living areas you've stated, Aaron. It's just a stigma that's out there.
It can be an issue. So it should be taken seriously when it's at that threshold where the wood is rotting out or where it's causing damage to, like, it's dripping down on the materials below and causing damage. It really needs to be taken seriously. I'm not saying not to take it seriously. I'm saying don't call it mold remediation. Don't call it a detail if you're just running it through the car wash.
That makes sense.
People are being misinformed every day, even by my competition.
So one of the things that we need to make sure of is when we're dealing with the mold is to deal with what caused the mold to show up. I'm almost going to say visibly in the first place. If we don't have that cross ventilation, that's when the mold is really going to be most likely to appear. And of course, if we're throwing a bathroom vent into an attic, which hasn't got proper cross ventilation, it's even that much more likely. One question that came up with this, Aaron, is can you address what black mold is?
Yeah.
Because what we do is I even saw it on TV the other day. Somebody was doing an inspection and they went, oh, look, it's black mold. You got black mold because it was black colored mold.
Okay. So the news, so there's no such thing as the black mold. It's a media terminology, and it was, came out on 2020 or 60 Minutes like 20 years ago. But what they're referring to when they talk about black mold these days is toxigenic species of mold that actually, toxigenic means it can cause a disease. So those types of mold, the most common one in the indoor environment is called Stachybotrys or Stachybotrys. You ever heard someone talk about Stachy? That's definitely going to need a professional mold remediation. That's the one kind that everybody is extremely terrified of. There's really three of them: Stachybotrys, Chaetomium, and Penicillium at an extremely high level can become toxigenic as well. So, so those are the things that we kind of that people refer to as the black mold.
So here was the next one. Can you tell by looking at it? Do they look different?
Well, interestingly, the laboratory will tell you absolutely not. They have to see it under a microscope because you can certainly misidentify it by looking at it with your eyeballs. But I can also tell you through my experience as a remediator that Stachybotrys, Chaetomium, and other really gnarly types of mold didn't just happen. They're usually not the first types of mold to get there. So if the mold looks really old, really black, really slimy, it very well could be Stachybotrys. If it looks like mold's growing on top of mold and it's sticking out and there's depth to it, it could be the black mold, what they call the black mold, Stachybotrys. Yeah.
So one of the keys is that for us to really know what it is, we need to have it tested.
Yeah, well, it's so, and that's a good question too, and a good way to frame the question. Do we need to know what it is to get rid of it? Not really, because getting rid of it is the same no matter what kind it is. But what we need to know is, where did it come from? Where did the water damage come from? The first primary goal of any mold remediation project is to stop the water source. So if wherever the water came from comes back, you didn't do a good job remediating the mold.
So kind of knowing what you deal with, flood water, backed up sump pumps that stop operating, you come in, what's the first thing that you do?
Remove excess standing water, any standing water, and identify and stop the source as soon as possible before any other functions are done.
And so that's kind of what, I've become familiar with in talking with you, is if ever you have water in a basement or anywhere else, we need to get it to the point to where we get rid of the moisture.
Well, yeah, but also to find out, to really solve the where did it come from problem.
Yes.
Like, unfortunately, with water restoration, unfortunately, it's like a lot of other things in construction. It requires multiple disciplines, multiple types of contractors to solve the problem. It's a process. Just like being a real estate transaction requires several different people to pull off from beginning to end. Same thing as a restoration job.
Makes sense. So Aaron, knowing your services, and I've already given everybody your contact information. Guys, that's in the chat room. If you haven't noticed that yet, you might want to make note of that. What if an inspector says, hey, here's mold in the attic, here's pictures of it, and they needed to get, I don't know if it's an estimate or what you would do, what might be a charge just to have you come out and take a look at something? What would be the process?
So that's the whole thing I was kind of saying from the beginning. It's, I know this is going to sound weird. That's not the work that we're after. I mean, we will do it, and if you look us up, we will do it. It's $3 a square foot. If you need a document typed up so that you can make a real estate transaction go through, I guess, then call me. But I would really, really, really rather you understand that me typing up $3 a square foot and sending it to you and you giving it to your customer is doing them a disservice. Because if they don't concentrate on what caused them the humidity in the attic in the first place, they're wasting their time with the $3 a square foot. And also, if the roof is 20 years old, it's more cost effective to replace the boards than to clean them with sodium hypochlorite. So can you get me out for an inspection? I'd rather refer you to a mold inspector. And I would like you, if you have a buyer that really wants to know, not just to negotiate, but really wants to know about this situation, I would refer you to a mold inspector who would take an interior air quality test and go up and look around in the attic and give you a report about what to do to solve the problem. And it would be just as much as paying a home inspector, but it's valuable information. But like I said, if you just call a mold remediator, we're just going to remediate the mold. That's not the whole problem.
And I think that's a real key that we've got to pick up on, is that we've got to get that cross ventilation in the attic.
And the insulation proper, and the ducts from the bathroom vented properly and insulated, and a whole host of other issues. Sometimes it's, but will we come out? Sure. If the homeowner, the person that owns the house, has exhausted and figured out where the source is and done something to stop it, then certainly we will come out for free inspections. But we don't want to be used as an inspection service. It's not beneficial to us. It costs me $150 to have one of my guys go up and look in an attic. So I would rather you just have the hygienist go out and do that third party. Maybe you'll be lucky and he'll tell you don't need us. That'll be the best case for your buyer. You don't need anybody else. You're good. You know?
So that's really the key. We need to figure out why it happened. You're simply the cleaner.
That's right.
If it comes to that. That makes a lot of sense. Makes
That's
a lot
right.
of sense.
And my guys can hypothesize. We're nice people. If my workers see the insulation blocking the eaves, they will pull it back. But should it have been blocking the eaves? Why is there no baffles there? Why are there, is there enough insulation? Is there some missing spots? Is it the right insulation for the application? I'd rather a qualified insulation person make that determination.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Here was one last question in the chat. So is black mold in the attic? Oops, it moved on me. So is black mold dangerous in the attic if there shouldn't be airflow going into the home from the attic?
Typically, you're not going to get black mold in an attic because it usually, what we call black mold, the stachy, the chaetomium, are areas where there's a leak and it doesn't hide. It will come right through the ceiling. Can it be there, especially in an abandoned home? Yes, of course. If a house sits with a leak, tree came through the roof, it stayed wet 20 times, yes, it can. But typically, you're going to find ubiquitous mold species in the attic, like cladosporium or something along those lines, basidiospores, something along those lines. And it's not going to be the scary kind, although it's all cleaned the same way. If I knew about black mold in the attic, I might ask the people to move out during the duration of the cleanup, just as a precaution. I might insist on bringing third-party testing. Typically, when we do cleaning of removal of mold in an attic, there's no testing, there's no moving out. They're just cleaning the surface. They're getting off the surface.
Would it be fair to say that black mold is a poor term to be able to use because any color of mold could be toxic?
Yeah, it's not, I mean, it's just a term. If you're just trying to scare people, it's a great terminology to use, but otherwise there's really no such thing as it. I guess, you pulled me in, you mentioned it, so then I used it 3 sentences later. But the truth is, anywhere where there's water, call it water damage. Look at black mold in your head and just refer to it as water damage, because that's what it is. If you think it's black mold, you're looking at water damage, I promise you.
Because it won't grow without moisture.
Right. I mean, the fact is there's moisture in the air too. So especially in the attic, this is an interesting that I heard today. When you cool a surface by 1 degree, it raises the relative humidity by 2.2%.
Wow.
So a roof decking will just go up and up and up and up because it's so cold compared to the warm air that's coming up around the attic. The difference is the dew point. And when the boards are colder than the dew point, they'll start to drip, they'll start to condensate. And that's kind of what's creating it. So, there's a couple of different ways of dealing with it long term. You can insulate the attic better. You can foam seal the insulation. You can make sure all your light fixtures have the insulation thing around the rings that we sometimes forget when we're putting the new things up and go, what are these extra parts for?
All right.
Yeah, to answer your question, black mold as an industry is a misnomer. It's just water damage. There's so many different species and they're all different colors. So, sorry. Again,
Sounds good. Well, that's one last question. We've got 12:30. Can you recommend a couple of reputable mold, radon, vermiculite, any inspection companies? And there you go. You've already put it in there.
Yeah.
So guys, take note of these. I'll actually leave them up for a
Sorry,
bit.
I'm
so
not
that
putting
you
the
can get
numbers
those
in. I
written
should have
down.
been prepared for this, but sorry, I didn't have their phone numbers handy. But you guys can also call me, and I'll remind you anything I just said.
Jim,
Someone
was gonna
asked a
say
good
that-
question. Yeah,
yeah, let's go ahead because it's a
So-
pretty solid question there.
it's a really solid question, and I'll try to keep the answer short. And the answer is yes. So how do you convince them? I guess you could bring them over to your house and pop the ladder down and move them up, or you could show them pictures of the last attic that they just moved out of. That would probably convince them. I will tell you this, I could maybe give you a testimonial. I bought my house 7 years ago, knew there was mold in the attic. I got a reduction on the price. I haven't cleaned it out yet. I've had the air quality test just because it's almost free to me. I've had the air testing and done in my house 4 times since then in the last 7 years. Got excellent air quality because my wife keeps the house completely dust free. We jump on any water issues right away. So, and make sure there's a dehumidifier in the basement. So if you guys have any questions at all, Aaron from Dry Medic, I hope you don't need me, but what happens is people do sometimes. So take my phone number down, put me in under fire, water, mold. Hot topic.
Dry medic. So, hey, great question. Yes, guys, the primary reason in real estate that we've got to deal with it once it's identified, really it's the stigma. So Aaron just gave a great example. It's a stigma. People go, oh, it's got mold. Does it impact the value? Only because of the stigma. Now, if it's a real issue, it should be taken care of. I'm going to say, take care of the issue that caused it to show up in the first place. So we had a great 30 plus minutes. It's, I think, the first time we've gone 2.5 minutes over. Aaron Fogarasi, thank you, bud. I appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
Everybody have a great one. So here's another wrap to another Hot Topic Tuesday.
All right,
See you
guys.
guys.
Be well.